You know what time it is?
Prime
It's
time.
prime time. We're going live on the internet, the real internet. Hey, Andy, take it away.
What's up, guys?
Oh,
What's up, Andy?
Hey, Charles Branch, I'm taking a chance. I'm playing a song on T5. What time is it? What time is it? It's prime time. It's prime time. What time is it? What time is it? It's prime time. It's prime time. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends around the world, it's Tuesday. It's prime time. Tonight's guest, please welcome Vice President of Manufacturing, Mr. Chris Wellons.
Thank you. Thank you. The crowd goes mild.
They go mild. They go mild, they go mild, they go mild.
hey, Craig.
Let's say hello to Mr. Chris Sharp. Hey, Chris.
Hey guys, what's up?
And your host, Mr. Jay Parkin. Hey, Jay. It's prime time. It's prime time.
It's so good. It's so good. Andy, you did it on a T5.
I did.
That was for
It's for Charles.
That was Charles. We had a request that
That was awesome.
Andy played the primetime theme with a T5, and he did it. You succeeded, my friend.
I've
How
got
you doing?
my tip jar is right here, Charles. Tip memo.
We got Sharpie up in there and up in the corner, I think. Are you in the corner? Yeah, you're in the corner.
I'm in the corner today.
How you doing, Sharpie?
I'm good, man. I was just telling these guys right before we went live, this is my favorite day of the week. I
Yeah.
always get so stoked to do this and hang out with our friends.
That's awesome. And what a privilege do we have with man Chris Wellons, VP of Manufacturing at Taylor Guitars, Mr. Chris Wellons. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing very well, Jay. Thanks for asking.
That is awesome.
I think the best part of that song that Andy just played was it was so impromptu. That was last minute. Andy got up right before we went live, grabbed the guitar and switched everything up. I loved it.
Yeah, it's funny. You watch him write during the show. He's actually writing lyrics for the rest of this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Before we get started, Chris, and before we dive into today's episode, which, if you are wondering, folks, holy smokes, Sharpie, look how many people are watching. A lot. That's great. All right. We are talking about manufacturing across borders today. And before we dive into that, guess what? We added a segment to the show.
About 30 minutes ago.
Yeah. 30 minutes ago, we added a segment, and it's called Hug Your Haters. Andy, do you have a song for us?
Everybody needs a hug these days. Maybe now more than ever. Remember to keep hugs distant and virtual. Stay safe. Don't take their bait. And hug your haters. Hug your haters. Hug your haters from at least 6 to 10 feet away.
That was beautiful.
That was beautiful. Andy, we should record that and release it. That was great. Hug Your Haters. Welcome to the segment we're calling Hug Your Haters. We get a lot of emails about Taylor Primetime. A majority of them are loving and kind and awesome, but some of them aren't so happy. And so we just want to give you all a digital hug and tell you we hear you loud and clear. So, all right. The first piece of hate mail we got was we had somebody have a hard time watching the show live on YouTube. So, Mr. Sharp, do you have instructions on how to watch this show live on YouTube?
I do. At 6 p.m. we go live on YouTube, youtube.com/Taylor. Type that in, hit enter at 6 p.m. We'll be there at the top. If you don't see us, hit it again in your feed. It'll refresh. We'll be waiting for you. That's it.
All right, so we hugged that hater. I don't think they're hating anymore. They got the information they needed. Valuable
here?
information. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharp. And then the next one was, man, do you remember the next one, Sharpie?
I don't.
You don't remember the next one?
Mm-mm.
That's because there wasn't any next one. I'm just kidding. We got a next one. And the next one was somebody was pretty upset that in our email, our writer wrote that Tasmania was a country. Oops.
It's a state in Australia. Everyone knows that.
It's a state in Australia. So you know what? We're going to have to give him some, stuff on the side after the show.
We'll have to get him a map.
We're just average Americans.
We'll have to get our writer a map. So there we go. Hug your haters. Thank you, Andy, for the song. Let's get into tonight's episode, Manufacturing Across Borders. Mr. Chris Wellons, how long have you worked at Taylor Guitars?
A little over 28 years.
28 years. And true or false, you didn't come to work on your first day.
That's a true story, Jay. Thanks for bringing it up.
It's so good. It's so good.
True story.
You've been here for 28 years, and on the first day you didn't show up. I absolutely love it. But you're here now, and you're here with us, and we got a ton of questions that we're going to dive into in a minute. But right now, what are you in charge of at Taylor Guitars? What does VP of Manufacturing actually do?
Well, overall, I'm in charge of the manufacturing in both of our factories in El Cajon, California, as well as Tecate, Mexico. That's a simplified version of it. I have a wonderful team that works with me, from our production managers all the way down to production coordinators and the managers and supervisors of the shop floor. They do all the real hard work. If I'm being honest about it, they're doing everything on a daily basis and making it happen for you guys out there.
So 28 years ago, what did you start doing? What was your first job at Taylor?
My first job at Taylor was setting up some machinery, some woodworking machinery. My background is in woodworking, furniture making. So I set up machinery and I ended up building sanding booths for the company. And when we moved from our old location in Santee to our location in El Cajon, I made kitchen tables and kitchen cabinets and made cabinetry for the shop, things of that nature. And then I eventually moved into the mill and worked my way through the mill and every production department.
You may be the epitome of success at Taylor Guitars. I mean, you started 28 years ago, you didn't show up on your first day, and now you're the VP of Manufacturing.
Yeah.
That is the route to take. So
Let's be clear, though. It's not that I didn't show up for my first day. I didn't actually accept the job yet. And that was supposed to be the day that I was there to accept the job, which is really what that was. So it could have been my first day. But yeah, I've had a very fun and long lasting career at Taylor, and I look to retire there in the future. Absolutely.
So when you started, you said you started in the Santee shop, right?
Yeah.
How many people were there on your first day? When you walked in, how many employees worked at Taylor?
I was the 34th employee,
mm-hmm.
and we were making, give or take, 13 to 15 guitars a day.
Whew. All right.
And now you guys know we have over 1,000 employees, and we're making, upwards of 600-700 guitars a day. Yeah.
Wow. So you watched that whole path happen, and you were actually a part of making it, making that jump. That's pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been fun.
That is pretty incredible. So tonight's topic is manufacturing across borders. And there's we take some of this knowledge and take some of these questions that we get in regular situations when we're not in COVID, and we've kind of crafted these shows and these episodes. And a lot of you know that we've kind of taken this from our road show. If you've ever been to one of our road shows, Andy gives road shows all the time, and Chris has done a lot of road shows and so on and so forth. But Chris and I also do factory tours, and a lot of
This
people.
Chris.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, Sharpie. I keep doing that. You know what I mean? Last week I
If
called
we have two Chris's tonight, we gotta differentiate.
I've given a few factory tours as well, so we're good there.
All right.
You've given a lot of factory tours, I'm sure. Andy, have you ever given a factory tour?
I give private ones, Jay.
Oh, if you want a VIP tour, ask for Andy.
Artist only for Andy.
I'm Andy.
No, I have artists that have come over, and I do give tours to some of my clients. I don't do the public tours though, but yeah, I've been through it's one of my favorite things to do because as we've talked about, I'm gone most of the time. Every time I come back, it's like, that used to be in the other room. Like things change all the time in the factory. In a good way, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So before we wanted to do this show just to kind of pull the curtain open a little bit and let you guys in to what really goes down at Taylor, because there is a misconception that we built a factory in Tecate, Mexico, which is way down in Mexico over the border, which is truth of the matter. It's only 45 minutes away from the El Cajon factory. And we're there on a regular basis. But, well, maybe not now in this COVID time, but we can
currently,
work. Yeah. But what are the similarities? What are the things that people need to know about the two factories? What are the similarities of the two factories, Chris?
It would actually be easier to tell you what wasn't similar in each factory, but
perfect.
I'll start with like machinery, tooling, molds, jigs, fixtures, you name it. It's all identical to what we use in El Cajon. So our tooling department, engineering department, duplicated tooling. We took that tooling down to Mexico and started building guitars there with the same exact tooling that we're using in El Cajon, same exact machinery. We have the same leadership team that works with Tecate, same team works in El Cajon, same management team crosses the border. Like you said, it's a 45-minute to 60-minute door-to-door trip. That's it. So it's easy for us to manage. I think it was a brilliant idea that Bob and Kurt had early on to start a small little factory there making, can we make parts and pieces for guitars there? Can we then start making cases in Mexico? And that just eventually blossomed into the natural growth of guitar making and making guitars in Mexico. But really, the product development plan is exactly the same. We just had a meeting today about some tooling for Mexico. It's all being manufactured in our El Cajon plant. They do some manufacturing of tooling now in Mexico. They're building their own tooling team. So the process, attention to detail, the workmanship, it's all the same training team that develops it, and we deliver that in Mexico as well. So what's not similar? They have better food there. Let's see, Tecate Light on tap. No, I'm joking, but it's really just people that go from El Cajon to Mexico. They go, wow, they're really identical factories. They're the same machinery, same teams building them. So
why
sorry, Jay. In some ways, it seems like the Tecate factory is more advanced, maybe just from a design perspective of having the history of building guitars in California.
Yes, so they benefited from our organic growth in El Cajon. So we had one small building in El Cajon, our 1940 property. Then we broke ground on 1980, and I believe that was in 1995. So we moved into our El Cajon facility in 92. We were breaking ground in 95 to build a new building, and that organic growth just took off. So the beauty of our Tecate factory is we had the ability to look at this envelope and go, where do we want and how do we want it developed and designed? And part of that design team was, let's do quiet and clean all the way to dirty and noisy on the other end of the factory, and have it streamlined and most efficient as possible. So you're absolutely right, Andy. They benefited a lot from that of our experience over the years.
So what was it like? I mean, what is the square footage down there? It's about 160-ish?
120 some change.
I added. It's like
1,000 square feet. Yeah.
I went deep. Home run. It was 1,000-foot home run. Anyway, so what was it? what was it like when you guys were with the team was building the factory down there? I mean, it was a blank canvas. It seems like our El Cajon factory is many years of moving things around and becoming more efficient. What was it like just having a blank canvas to walk into?
It was actually exciting that, the engineering and tooling team, Ed Granero led that project. You guys just did an episode with Ed Granero. I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Um, but Ed led that project, and we met several times a week with the manufacturing teams, and we put the plan together and did layouts and decided where we wanted equipment. The fun part was when we actually started outfitting that factory, moving in collection systems and doing things of that nature. And then the fun part came where we were moving from our original factory, which was on the eastern side of Tecate, and we started migrating all of our tooling and all of our processes and all of our guitar building to our new factory, which is on the western side of Tecate. And we really started dividing up the production teams, kind of starting at the end and the beginning, and figuring out what do we want to move first, what makes most sense. So there was a lot of fun in that. It was a real challenge, but it was very beneficial. I remember that year very, very specifically. We increased production while we moved our factory at the same time, and made it happen. We had a great year that year.
Yeah. How long did that take? Because I remember when at that time, there would be portions of the build in Tecate at the old factory, and then portions in the new one. From moving that first department to the new factory and getting the department over, how long was that period? I don't even recall at all.
It took over a year to have the whole thing completed, move by move. And we started small, moving over small equipment that we knew we may not need. We rented a warehouse in town where we put equipment that we weren't planning to use in the new factory, things of that nature. But you're right, we did it from end to end, and it took us over a year to move everything.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it took over a year to move it across a city. Someone had asked Bob last week on our show if we would ever move to another state, and it's like, gosh, moving the El Cajon factory to another state would just be
that would be monumental. That would be monumental. I think there were some in the earlier years. I think Bob and Kurt were looking at buying some property or doing something in Poway, California, which is just a short little drive up the freeway here from where we are in El Cajon. But that became this, like, how are we going to make this happen, right? How do you transfer everything up the street? But we did it in Mexico, so it's possible.
That's amazing. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about is Bob Taylor always talks about standardization. The same tools, or is it true that the same tools we use to build the tools are the tools we use to build guitars in El Cajon are the tools we also have in Tecate? Is everything the same? Is manufacturing the same at the end of the day?
The simple answer is yes. It's the same as the model of guitar. So if you were to take, I'll give you a perfect example, a baby Taylor neck, that's the only unique tooling we have that's in Mexico, because that's where we make the baby Taylor. But if you were to take a 200 deluxe neck and a 700 series neck, it's the same exact tooling, same exact fixturing, same exact everything that produces those two parts. One's done in El Cajon and one's done in Tecate, Mexico. So it's same. Lo mismo.
That's crazy. I think that was one of the things here that when I first got to Taylor, it was eye-opening, right? You think that, well, it's a factory right here in the United States. It has to be better. And then I had the opportunity to go down to Tecate, and it was like, talk about guitar nerd. It's pretty funny. Paul Tobias is always watching us. He said it's hard to watch the show when the Cubbies are playing. Paul, I wore this hat for you, so I got you. It's kind of like the Cubs are playing, but we're not. I remember his reaction the first time he was able to go down there, or one of the times he was here, and he was just in awe of what he saw. It's just so sophisticated down there. Would you say it's almost a better factory than the factory in El Cajon?
It's absolutely one of the most state of the art factories in the world. It's a better factory than El Cajon in many senses. You guys that have been there, the envelope is there. We built the factory within the way that we wanted it, and then we've kept it super clean, and we've done our best to just have a standardized 5S process in place and do the things that we know that we can do best. El Cajon, you have different buildings and different groups in each building and different building ownership type of things, and it's hard to migrate and get a whole team to take care of all these buildings versus one building. You know, you can walk around a building and actually check it out in a day, whereas you guys know we have seven buildings in El Cajon, so keeping up with that is a lot more work as well.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
So I go ahead. You got a question?
Question for Chris. I think it's pretty fascinating that, like he mentioned that he was what, employee number 34 or something like that.
34.
34, and
Yeah.
we're building 15 guitars or so a day. So somebody who has evolved into the position that you hold now, like, what did you study, and where is your inspiration for moving things forward? I mean, you can't just one day walk into a factory that's going to build 500 guitars a day when you're used to building 15. Like, what kind of tools or what kind of work have people like you and Ed? What do you do to stay current and to stay on top of technology?
Well, I would say that I mean, I don't want to speak for Ed, but we are lifetime learners. I think what drove Ed and I to Taylor Guitars overall was the woodworking aspect. You know, I wasn't a guitar player. I don't call myself a guitar player now. I grew up playing percussion, playing the drums through elementary school and junior high and into high school. My brother could pick up any stringed instrument and play it. I didn't have that talent right out of the gate. But woodworking, I mean, I started woodworking with my neighbors when I was about 12 years old, and that continued to just feed my passion. That passion goes from learning woodworking and learning that skill and craftsmanship to then learning how do you expand, how do you turn woodworking into a business. So you end up reading periodicals or magazines or books about woodworking and growth, and then you're on, you know, you go down a road of how to standardize a process and get more for less, right? So I think just educating ourselves, doing seminars, reading. I mean, I subscribe to several digital issues of magazines that I comb through and read the articles in there about, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there doing great things. Taylor Guitars learns from the whole, right? The whole sum of everybody that's working there, not just one genius mind. I give a lot of credit to Bob and his mind for a factory and how to make it work and make it operate. But it's been years and years, and I've educated myself on the job, and Bob's educated me, and I've made plenty of big mistakes, right? Where Bob was just so disappointed in me and let me know it, but you know, you come back the next day licking your wounds and you figure out how not to make that mistake again and move yourself forward, move the team forward. So I've taken classes over the years. I started MBA classes, those types of things. That didn't really help me with the manufacturing and the process of producing guitars, but it helped me gain a much more of a knowledge about the business and how it operates.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. At the beginning of COVID, then when we were first at a stay-at-home order and the factory was closed, I'm, as a lot of you know, I manage content marketing at Taylor, and I'm in charge of social media, so on and so forth. And I wanted to work with Bob about, I wanted him to just give a message to people. Bob is a very inspiring guy. So that is a thing. You saw him last week. He enjoys what we do. He loves this place. He loves us all as employees and friends and folks that we work here. And but to open the curtain a little bit, you just said something about Bob was frustrated, or he's been frustrated with you, and we use that. I think the entire culture at Taylor is learning moments, and I don't know if do we make mistakes? Yeah, we make mistakes, but I would say we don't make mistakes. We have learning moments. We get better with every single mistake that we make, right? And
that's true.
It's pretty inspiring to have you here and just listen to that. Did you want, I mean, one of the things that Bob said when we made this piece of content early on was only a guitar maker knows what a guitar maker does. It's pretty inspiring, right? And you look at it
Right.
like, wow, you're right. But there are a lot of people at Taylor who aren't guitar makers. So for us to get a chance to sit here and talk to you, do you feel like, you know, we talked yesterday and you said, I really didn't want to do this necessarily. Do you feel like you're a guitar maker now? Is that what is this a calling for you?
It absolutely is. I think the most important part of that is I wasn't a guitar maker when I came on board. I'm a guitar maker today. I had the ability and they afforded me the ability to build my own guitars on site at Taylor Guitars when we had an employee guitar building program. A lot of people took advantage of that program and had friends help them within the factory do certain things. I was adamant on doing my own guitar. Of course, I had help. I didn't know how to pound in frets, when I made my neck, and we were hand pounding frets back then and hand filing frets. We didn't have an NT neck at that point in time. So I gathered as much knowledge as I could from all the experts that I worked with, and there were a lot of great builders there. And still today, there are a lot of guys on the shop floor that build ukuleles and guitars out of the garage on a regular basis. So yeah, I absolutely, I love it. I would rather not be anywhere else in the world than where I am today.
Now I have a question for you. Do you still have that guitar you made?
I do. It's in my bedroom right now.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I'll never sell that guitar. I've been offered quite a bit of money for that guitar. I would never sell it.
It's
Oh,
not
I have,
left-handed anyway, Sharpie. So
Oh no,
yeah.
I understand.
You took my, oh, that's Andy, you and I
There's
are,
lefty questions.
that was
My
awesome.
people are here. They're
That was
here.
You just
awesome.
you just play it like McGargle. Come on, guys.
Flat
Right?
down. Anyway, that's so fantastic. So let's dive in a little bit to some questions that we get on the tour, right? If
Okay.
any of you out there who are watching this live have been to the factory, you've seen how sophisticated we are, how sophisticated the factory is. You've seen how many people actually touch. There's this thing in the ether that we are made in totally robotics. And I often have a joke on our tours that, I say, I'm sorry, but there are actually more hands than tools that touch your guitars, which is true. But there's a thing out there that it's a guitar made in Mexico. That means it's cheap. What would you say
Okay.
if somebody brought that question to you? Why are the guitars made in Mexico, and are they cheaper at the end of the day?
It's an absolute incorrect statement. Are they less expensive for the most part? Yes. And that's due to the process and the materials that we use there. But the guitars are not cheaper. They're made with the same, like I said earlier, I can't reiterate it enough. It's the same tooling that goes into the guitar. It's the same training that we put behind, the training teams put behind all of it. It's the same standard work documents that we work off of, right? So if we're educating employees on how to build the instruments in El Cajon, we can educate different employees how to build those instruments in Mexico and come out with the same result, right? So that's our goal. The craftsmanship that goes into those guitars, what we've tried to do is simplify some things down in Mexico. The appointments of the guitars aren't the same, right? They're not as intricate. Why? Well, because that's how we keep the cost down there. So we're not spending the hours of time of labor that's going into a 700, 800, 900 series that would be going into a, Academy 100 or 200, for example. So it's not a true statement, Jay. Don't say it again.
I'm not going to say it again. We're
hey,
just,
Jay.
Don't say it again.
we get yelled at all the time on social media about that, and so it's fun to bring it
Really?
up.
Oh yeah,
I'm
but
glad I don't have your job.
We're just hugging haters. We love it. We love it.
both
We like hugs.
both my tailors I own are Takati made, and they're the best. I them. It's one of those things when sometimes people talk to us, whether Andy I'm sure it's happened at road shows for you and on tours, Jay, and all that stuff of, but it's just a 214, it's just a 100, it's just a baby. I'm like, yeah, right. These guitars are so good, you know,
Yeah, they're
like
great.
if you jumped in and you have a Taylor, you've got a quality guitar, whether it's entry level or a custom.
Yeah,
It's all the same quality, everything, and that's why it says quality on that sign behind Jay, you know. So
absolutely true. I own a baby. I have a GS Mini. I have a GS Mini bass. I have the guitar I built, which is basically a GA Koa K24. I have a W10. So I look at the GS Mini and my W10 and my guitar that I built. The guitar that gets out played the most is the GS Mini. I mean,
yeah.
it's a great guitar. It's awesome. Most people, most of my friends and family are like, "What's the best guitar I can buy? What am I going to get?" And I'm like, "You should get a GS Mini." Right? It's like the guitar that's the best thing you could get. You want one? Let's get you one. You know,
I
it's a
don't.
great guitar.
Andy, I saw you raising your hand. Andy, you have something to say.
I'm trying to be polite, Jay, on your show because I want to get invited back.
Your show too. Andy.
Jay,
In fact,
it's our show, Andy. You're the music guy. We can't do this without
Andy,
you.
we can't
So-
do this without you.
Yeah, sure you can. So I can comment a little bit on a couple of things. Kind of came full circle with Chris coming on the show today because if you think about the people that have been on the show, Chris Wellons, Ed Granero, Rob McGargle, Terry Myers, Bob Taylor, Andy Powers. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting
Scott Paul.
Scott Paul.
Yep.
Majority, all those people, like their whole professional career has been at the company. So this is like we are in our golden era now, right? And now with the addition of Andy Powers, the foundation that all these other gentlemen that I mentioned built allows Andy just to go out and do his amazing stuff, right? And what's happened over that time, before I came to work at Taylor Guitars, I had a small little guitar shop in Central Illinois. I started selling Taylors from 1993 to about 05. And the area that I was in, pretty conservative area, right? Pretty traditional. Lots of Martin Love in the area where I store. And when you guys first came out with a Mexican-made guitar, there was a big objection to that. Like I used to have to fight through that all the time. You know, like Mexico, it's cheap. Exactly what you said, Jay. That was definitely a thing back in the day. But by the time I left to move out here, that was gone. Because you had proven it so well over the years of what was it, baby first and then 100, then 200, and then the GS Mini family. It expanded, right? It started with Case and Tecate.
What people forget is we started building the baby and the 100 in El Cajon, right? With all the same tooling, and then we transferred it down to Mexico. So that's you remember that up in the 1900 building, chicken hanger.
Yeah, the chicken hanger. So congrats to all you guys because you all made that happen. And the proximity of the El Cajon factory to the Tecate factory allowed for that vision of managers managing both factories. I think.
Yeah.
I think a lot to do.
Andy, it's a good point. I tell people a quick story about the Toyota and Lexus, right? So a Toyota Corolla is built on a chassis. The Lexus IS250, that car is built on the same exact chassis as the Toyota Corolla. So it's got the same foundation, right? What's different about the Lexus than the Toyota? It's dressed up, right? It's got abalone shell on it. It's got paint. It's got leather interior. It's got the bells and whistles. That's what you're getting. You're getting a different guitar that's got all these bells and whistles on it that's built in El Cajon with solid wood back and sides. That's the major thing, right? Versus the laminated or layered back and sides that we do in Mexico. But I also challenge people and I go, so if you buy a car, it's a Toyota. Toyota has manufacturing plants all over the world. If you buy a Toyota Tacoma, it's coming out of Mexico. There's a Toyota Tacoma plant. We can see it from our factory in Mexico. So is that truck cheaper than another truck or another Toyota that's being built around the world? I say no, it's not. It's one of the best vehicles on the road.
It's,
So,
yeah,
so there, that's my piece.
I love it. I would second Andy. I mean, I was working in a guitar shop when Taylor started um, making a Mexican-made guitar, and when I first got my hands on them, of course, you got to fight through that objection all day long. Well,
Right.
it's gotta be this or it's gotta be that, and you pick them up, and it's like, wait a second, that thing plays
It
identical.
plays great. Wow, this intonation's perfect. This guitar sounds awesome. Yeah.
So
Just pick one up, try it.
you know what's awesome is this is a really wonderful segue because you spoke on it just a little bit about layered wood.
Hmm.
So the difference, a main difference, right, would be the guitars that are made in El Cajon, California, are 300 series and up, are
Correct.
all solid wood instruments. And the guitars that are made in our Tecate factory are layered wood instruments. So layered wood is, we kind of got away from calling it laminate because that can be confusing. Usually laminate means a composite of some sort, or some of us in guitar sales would have said it's a photographic application. So it's a
Right.
photograph of wood on top of a composite, and then they put
Right.
it together. Why the decision not to do that? Why the decision to use layered wood instead of a composite?
Uh, there's several decisions, but the easiest one is, like Bob says, if you want to have sustainability, you need to actually use something. So we believe in using the wood. We also believe in reforestation and growing more wood, right? So if you were to take, it's like if you take a 1-inch board and you resaw it into backs and sides for an El Cajon made guitar, you get 4, maybe 6 sets out of that piece of wood, depending on what thickness you're using. We can take that same piece of wood, take our Koa guitars, for example, and send it to be sliced into veneers, and we get a dozen guitars out of that same piece of wood. So the sustainability is right there with it. We use a pine core or a poplar core. Most of those are peeled cores, so you get a higher yield from a peeled core veneer. And then we use some of the fall off pieces or that are not as beautiful, something that we want to put on the outside of the guitar. We use those on the inside. So if you look inside of a guitar, it's got 3 layers of wood. It's got the outside layer, which is to be the most beautiful that you're seeing for your eyes. It's got an internal layer with cross grain on it, which is rotated 90 degrees. That's your poplar or your pine core veneer. And then you've got a third veneer on the inside. We take those 3 veneers, we run them through glue, we put them in a hot press, we press those sides or backs, and then we turn them into backs and sides. One of the other major differences, you're not seeing a braced back coming out of Mexico right now because we press that shape into the back. So that back is rigid. We glue it to the side of the guitar and it's acting just like a guitar that's built in El Cajon. The difference is we're not making braces to glue on the back of the guitar. We're not taking the time to glue the braces on the back of the guitar. We pressed it all in one thing and we've built that body. So we've saved time, basically labor, and then materials going into that guitar, which allows us to keep that guitar in that price range. And we're
That
sustainable, right? So
Yeah. There was actually a question that came through based on what you were just saying of saving time. Comparing the El Cajon 300 series and up to a baby through 200, what is the time difference in building? Let's just make it easy and say a 214 versus a 314, right? Of time it takes to build, knowing that, hey, this is X brace versus V class. This is got brace back versus not.
well, so all in all, you're looking at a few hour difference, right? But you're also looking at days of difference. So what may take us several extra days to do in El Cajon because we're gluing something on and letting it dry and cure overnight before we're working on it again, we can move something on much faster in Mexico and shave time off of that. So the lead time or throughput, the lead time is less, your throughput is higher, and we get a lot of work in progress off the floor faster, which keeps the cost down as well.
Cool.
That's incredible.
Dig it.
Man, I've learned a lot already. A little You know, it's funny watching the feed over here, Sharpie, when people say, a little bird told me. I've always wanted to know who the
I've
little
never met the
is.
bird. Yeah.
I've never met the bird. And the little bird, and when people say, they told me, who's they? I really want to meet they. I've been asking my mom who they was forever, but she doesn't know either. Anyway,
birds.
so a little bird told me, the little bird is me. A trick to the recording folks out there that a 214 CE is one of the best guitars to record on the planet. I'm going to swear by that. It's such a fantastic guitar to record, which also means if it sounds good in a studio, Andy, probably could make that thing sound good live, couldn't you?
Yeah, I think that my first reaction to that would be that guitars that are all solid wood, top, sides, and back, have far more harmonic content going on within the sound, right? Every note that you hear in nature is a fundamental tone, and then there's a series of overtones that happen
Right.
it's in my voice. The only thing like that, if you've ever heard a sine wave generator plugged in, it's one of the most annoying sounds to your head because there's no overtones. It's just fundamental. So every sound that you hear in nature, in cars, car horns, birds singing, if we keep the bird analogy going, is a set of fundamentals, one fundamental note and overtones, right? There's less of that going on in a guitar that has some layered element to it. So in a recording situation, way easier to fit that into a sonic picture than a big solo instrument that has tons of ambience and tons of overtone harmonic content.
Yeah, they're fantastic guitars. Oh, and Chris, it's been awesome that you've peeled the curtain back just a little bit and told us and discussed stuff of what goes on in both factories. It is inspiring to watch it, and I hope that once this COVID thing blows over, if you will, that one day we'll be able to allow people in that Mexican factory so that people can see how sophisticated it is. I think it's time. I'm looking here, and I think it's time. We've had a wonderful discussion thus far, but it's time to start answering some questions. What do you think, Sharpie?
Let's do it. Yep, we've got email questions that came through. This feed is blowing up. It's time.
So, Chris,
do it.
you haven't seen any of these questions. I'm just kidding. You've seen some of them. But Sharpie, you want to take it away?
I'm scared.
All right, let's start with Wayne Miller, who sent one in via email. Does Taylor use any North American tone woods in guitars? More specific, American woods.
Yes, we do. We use maple, ash, Sitka spruce, cedar, to name 4 of them right off the top of my head. We use all those species. They're all North American woods. They're all grown right here in the great US of A.
Yep. All
Got another
right.
one, Sharpie?
I got tons in here.
I
All
got
right.
Hit me again. What do you got?
All right, cool. Can you ever see Taylor using alternate materials such as carbon fiber? Is that something we'll ever do?
I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say no.
No.
I love that answer. All right, next question.
And it's not a carbon fiber limb, if you know what I mean.
Bob said the same thing, so you're good with that answer.
I'm good.
We're just making sure you guys were all on the same page. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's the little birdie.
Hey. I got one more, and then Jay, you can have one. This one comes from Roddy. He's asked us a couple times. We hadn't gotten to it in previous shows. Right now, can a tuner be set into your guitars rather than having a clamp on the headstocks? We have tuners on a couple of them, but what do you say?
Question
Yeah,
comes up all the time, Chris, at road shows. People always asking, how come there's not a tuner built into your guitar?
Yeah, well, we've experimented with that, and what we've tried to do is keep the electronics as pure as possible. We could add a cheap tuner. Everyone knows this, right? We could source a cheap tuner and have it integrated into our electronics. It's just not what we want to do with our electronics at this point. As you know, we've started to offer different things. So I'm sure in the future we will find something that a tuner that we're happy with that will integrate in built into their electronics. So Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot in the past too that that Bob's just not a fan of it. You know, he just doesn't like
Yeah.
looks on
Yeah. He
and
doesn't.
I'm really happy to hear you say cheap tuner. You know why? Because I go around the world and I see people
Yeah.
playing $3,000 guitars with a $6 tuner
I know.
attached to their headstock,
It happens all the time.
and they're terrible.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to even like a good app on your phone with
It's
like
better. Yeah.
a Peterson app, or a Diodario has a good one. Clip
Yep.
one of those cheap tuners on your headstock. All right. Then turn on your phone and look at the difference. And look how much you can turn the key without this one moving at all.
Yeah.
Get a decent tuner. Yeah.
I love it. I love it when Andy does that. That's my favorite. That's my favorite part of the show. I mean, the music's great and having all the guests is great, but when Andy's like, I'm glad you brought that up. It's so good. You know, it's
then he
also,
just does like a knowledge bomb, like right
I
on
know
you.
he drops the mic all the time.
It's
I would
amazing.
agree.
Some of those tuners you can you can get like an eighth of a turn on the tuning key, and the light doesn't change at all.
Yeah. What would you recommend if someone didn't want to use their phone, but they're like, hey, I want to get a headstock tuner? What? Hey, this is the Andy approved. This one out.
I think that some of the companies that have a little bit higher brand image, like TC Electronics, Peterson, those are the ones I would stay with. Unfortunately, it's kind of tuners. You go to a guitar store lots of times, and it's a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
so, but there are some better ones out there than others. Yeah.
You know, it's fun. So I spent many years touring with bands and guitar teching, and those of us who do that, we use strobe tuners,
Yeah.
right? We use strobe tuners. So often I have Peterson came out with a clip-on strobe tuner, and so when people ask me for a tuner, that's what I pull out and put it on the headstock and watch them go.
They can't read it.
They can't. All right, on from tuners. We got a couple of questions. Tex asked a really good question in the live feed over here. What is, Chris, this one's for you, of course.
Okay.
What is your favorite woodworking machine for guitars and why? That's a good
My
one.
favorite woodworking machine for guitars and why?
Or machine at Taylor. We'll Taylorify it.
Okay, well, I'll answer both of those questions then. My favorite woodworking machine is the table saw because it is so versatile. You can do amazing stuff. I've built cabinets on doors on a table saw. You can set it up like a shaper almost, cut coving, all sorts of stuff. But that's my favorite. The favorite guitar making machine we have is really a CNC. I mean, that I still marvel at the day I came in and we were carving a neck on a CNC machine, and I was like, what is going on? Right. I mean, I've read books and seen spoke shaves and all this stuff over the years. And I've worked with a pattern mold and model maker that had some archaic tools that he could do some really precise work with. But the CNC is amazing. I mean, program that baby and you get what you put in. It's precise. It's spot on. I love it.
That's awesome. Sharpie, do you have any, or do you want me to take one?
I have a statement from Z. From anybody who is curious about the factory in Takati Casino Guitars, if you go to their YouTube, has a Takati factory video if you want to get a sneak of what that looks like. I didn't have a question and a statement first.
Yes, I have one. Where did it go? Oh, it's right here. What is your definition? This one's great. Did you guys see this question? It's so good. I've been waiting all night to ask.
I don't get to see the live feed. I just get to see
no,
your faces.
This one came in via email, so this one's wonderful.
Okay.
What is your definition of handmade guitar?
Oh,
Love it.
that's one I answer on almost every tour, because a lot of people come in and they think that we literally shove this like tree stump in one end of the factory and then it just like goes through like Charlie Chocolate Factory and pops out a guitar at the other end, because it's all robotics, right? But a handmade instrument is made with people's hands. What we do is we use robotics to remove the back-breaking labor out of things that are just monotonous and boring. For everybody out there who's hand buffed a guitar, if you've ever hand buffed a guitar and then you do several of them a day, you don't ever want to hand buff a guitar again because it's back-breaking work. So why do we employ robotics? Because we can take those robotics and have it buff every guitar in our factory, and then we take those people that have been buffing guitars for years and we use them in labor intensive areas that actually produce better, more valuable work for the guitar itself, where it takes someone to think about what they're doing and think through the decisions they're making to build that guitar. So we build handmade guitars in both factories. I'll argue with anybody all day long about it.
One of my favorites about that and our use of technology and the marriage of craftsmanship and technology in our factory, like let's talk about Buffy or the buffing room. There's a percentage that's done on that machine, right? But then that last percentage is done by hand. So anytime we're using a technology, a tool, whatever it might be, there is that human touch to make sure that everything was done correctly. We don't really have a set quality assurance department. Everybody's responsible for that. So anytime we're using any machines, tools, anything like that, there is that human touch at the end that's going through everything, making sure everything's perfect before it goes to this department. So
yeah, there's
cool.
human
I
oversight
like
on it, right? Look, I love the story. Like I used to make parts on a shaper when I worked in the milling department, and we had these small little jigs and fixtures. We would shape nuts and we would shape saddles and we would do all this work on a shaper with jigs. I look at inlays. I made inlays when I first started at Taylor. We would cut abalone shell for rosette pieces with a dental burr and a router, and it was the worst, nastiest work. I look now, we cut all those pieces on a CNC machine, or we use a laser to cut parts that we used to cut on a shaper. Who doesn't want a better, more precise part made for their guitar? And who cares if it was cut on a machine? Really? I mean, you want me to use a jeweler saw to give you, what you want? Or do you just want us to, create a really nice, clean, perfect inlay for your guitar?
Yeah.
Term handmade has such a romantic quality to it, right?
Yeah.
But with every handmade guitar you get, you can kind of go, what's this little thing here? What's this little bump in the kerfing or in the bind? Well, that's handmade.
It's handmade.
And then they don't want it anymore. Like
people are like, people see, you guys know this, but people see our guitars on the internet and there's a certain color or tone that they see on their spruce top, and then they get their guitar and they're like, it wasn't the same exact color that I saw on the internet I'm like, no, you got a snowflake. Yeah. You got a one-of-a-kind instrument. Every one of them is different than the next, period. And that's the beauty of it.
And that's why I love our use of technology is consistency. So if you are buying something off the internet, it's like, okay, yeah, I got a 300 series, I got a 5, I got a 2. That guitar is going to play well, because where we use those tools and the machines is the important parts, where it's spot. Like, okay, it plays well. I mean, if we did everything completely by hand and somebody was a little sick that day or had a show the night before and stayed up late, whatever it is, and they're not making their best guitar, I don't want that one. I want the best one I could possibly get. Mm-hmm. And that marriage between the two is what gives us that, hey, you got a sure thing, this guitar is going to be great when it gets in your hands.
Yeah, we've all heard that over the years. You don't want to buy a car that was made on a Monday. No.
Well, guitars made on Monday at Taylor factories are great, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
I often talk on our tours about that right there, and one would be our use of lasers, right? The laser room. Use lasers to cut big parts and small parts, so on and so forth. And the fun thing to bring up is, now imagine if somebody had to do that on a bandsaw for 8 hours straight. How do you think the 4 o'clock tops look? I'm tired. I'm so tired of cutting these. They're wobbly and wavy.
Well, Jay, do you know that we used to take tops, rectangle tops, drill a pilot hole, stack them up 10, 12 at a time, drill a pilot hole where we wanted the sound hole to be, slip all those tops over a bolt on a board that had a template on it. We'd take it out to the bandsaw and rough cut the shape of each guitar out. You know, if we were building 12 guitars that day, we cut them all out. And now we're just loading them in a laser. We get a pilot hole for the sound hole. We get a cut perimeter perfect. We get a bullseye where we know exactly where we're going to glue the bridge on. Who doesn't want the guitar we're building today compared to what we were building back then, just from a precise intonation, playability perspective? That's what we're delivering today, the difference of what we were delivering then.
Did you guys have electricity back then?
We did, but we pedaled the machine. So you had to pedal it to produce it.
28 years ago, we pedaled the machine. I love it. Sharpie, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. G just asked. It was a good one. What happens to guitars that don't pass final quality control? What do we do with those?
It's a variety of things. Guitars that don't pass quality control that could still be made into a beautiful instrument, but it has a blemish on it that doesn't pass the test. We make props out of them. So Andy's holding a prop there. We sell them to friends and family. So we do some friends and family sales. Those guitars don't come with a warranty on them, for example, and other guitars get completely destroyed and deleted out of our system. So it just depends on what's wrong with the instrument. I heard somebody ask, there was a question earlier or something that got rotated around, but like, what percentage of parts don't make it through the factory? It's low, and depending on the area, it's 1 to 2%, depending on what we're talking about. But take bending sides, for instance. Bending sides on a Cocobolo guitar is much harder than bending sides on a mahogany guitar. So you have more failures with some of those more brittle and dense woods than you would on something that's, I mean, one of the best woods to work with is mahogany. So just giving you perspective on that. But we tend to make every guitar work. We just have some fallout along the way. And like I said, they're props. Andy's holding one. We make NT neck fit. You know, we build different props out of them, which come in really handy for the sales team. Yeah, that's a good one right there.
These are great. And we like to take these to road shows whenever we can, and to teach people how the spacers work in the
yeah.
neck that allow the neck.
I was telling someone today about one of our competitive advantages. It's that neck design right there. You know, pull that neck off, reset it, string it up. You got a brand new guitar in 15 minutes.
That's what Bob said he was most proud of, actually, when he was on the show.
Yeah.
Design.
I laughed.
And it was one of the most scary moments in the factory when we made that transition in '99 through 2001.
Yeah.
Kind of like, we're going for it.
I laugh for two reasons, but one, when we had Ed Granero on, we were talking about torture testing guitars, and one of our engineers, Ryan, I walked into his office, late 2019, and I saw about 15 GS Minis that he cut in half. And I about had a panic attack because the GS Mini is the greatest small guitar of all time, and every guitar player have one. And Sharpie, we make left-handed versions. By the way, my mother is left-handed, Sharpie, but she would play a guitar right-handed. Just throwing that out there. Just really.
Are you sure?
That's twice in one episode we have left-handed jokes headed your way. And then we had another fella out here who made a statement. This is for Jay. I know you're talking about guitars. Just FYI, the Cubs are up 8-3 on the Reds. So once again, we turned this show into a sports show.
You had to get that in there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Had to. This is wonderful. This is wonderful.
It's always baseball too, Chris. Chris and I run into each other we have a minor league hockey team here in San Diego, and we run into each other quite often at those games. But I never know what they're talking about when it's baseball. I'm just like, okay, sports time.
All right, so it's about that time where we're going to try and taper this off, and we're going to end the show this evening. I've got one more question from the emails that came in. Yeah, it's been an hour. Can you believe that? 59 minutes to be exact. Well, time flies when you're having fun. So I'm going to ask one more question. Then we're going to go into, the segment we call Sharpie's question. Yeah, love Sharpie's question. Anyway, okay. So we got a question from Daniel S. Via email. Why is the headstock and the neck in two pieces? What was the thinking behind that?
Well, the headstock and neck is 2 pieces, but the neck is actually in 3 pieces. Part of the NT neck design was how do we become more sustainable through the process. So we used to take, I wish I could draw something on a whiteboard right now, but we used to take 2 necks. Here, perfect, Andy. We used to take 2 necks and we would nestle those necks together. If this was the heel of the neck, we'd go like this, right? They're nested together, but we cut them out of 1 4x4 block of wood. So we would get 2 necks out of there. What we'd get out of the center was waste. So there were times that we're like, well, we could turn this waste into kerfing, so on and so forth. And when Bob came up with the NT neck design, you can take the same 4x4 piece of lumber and you can resaw 3 blanks out of it. And on the end of that board, we take the 3 heels. So through our factory, we separate the 3 heels, we separate the 3 necks, which then we cut the peg head off of, or the headstock. We then scarf joint it, glue it back together, which allows us to increase 33% in the factory, but it allowed us to increase over 50% yield on the factory or on the forest floor. So from a sustainability perspective, that's why that's there. From a build and precise perspective, that neck was designed to do that. The NT neck, the new technology neck design, was made so that we could make it so much more precise and make the playability of your neck better.
It's also stronger too.
Absolutely.
The area that always breaks on guitars is right in back of the nut. And this is twice as strong as a solid piece of wood.
So truth be told, as a woodworker, the glue joint is stronger than the wood itself if the glue joint is done properly. Andy, you are spot on.
Yeah.
I am not saying this whatsoever to bash another guitar brand because I am a very, very big fan of this guitar brand. But as a guitar tech, I have repaired over 20 Gibson SG headstock breaks.
Yeah.
Because it's a solid piece of wood and the string tension just pulls the headstock forward often. And it's happened time and time again. So I have a magic way of fixing those if you want. I'm just kidding.
You also toured with like hard rock bands and stuff though, right? Where
rock bands. They played.
They're knocking guitars off. They're falling down on stage. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you guys. We got an excellent crew watching us again tonight. You guys have all been fantastic. This is the time of the show, the segment we call Sharpie's Question. Take it away, Andy.
Chris Wellons, don't be nervous. Chris Sharpie, this is your time. From one Chris to another, live on Primetime. Here comes Sharpie's question.
All right, I'm gonna in the world of baseball, I guess I'm gonna give you a, what is it? Fastball down the center. Is one, Jay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Just don't throw me a changeup.
Chris, 28 years later, you're at Taylor Guitars. You've seen a lot. What's your favorite memory so far? I do not believe that your best day is behind you with us. You're rocking it. We love hanging out with you. But so far, what's your favorite memory?
My favorite memory of Taylor Guitars ever. I'm gonna have to say early on when Bob Taylor would come into the shop and he would you guys know Bob. A lot of people don't know Bob out there, but Bob would come in the shop and he would just give us a hard time, right? And he's completely joking, but everyone takes him seriously because he's one of the owners. You're like, whoa, listen up. But we were all in the body department one time, and Bob came in and gave us all a really hard time and left. And I went to his office to find out if he was serious because we all thought he was serious. And I went in there, he's like, I'm completely joking with you guys. I'm like, you have to come back out there and tell everyone that you're joking because we're all paranoid that he was really pissed off at us. But that's my favorite time. I have a lot of favorite times. I mean, 28 years, you can chalk up a lot of good memories. I have another memory. I just think, you said it earlier, Bob's so inspiring, but he can be inspiring in so many ways. He can gently embarrass you. He can overtly embarrass you. He can just do things that are hilarious to you. But there was a time I was in his office and he literally brought me to tears because I'd made a mistake, and he was just like, he was on my side, but he was like telling me what to do next and things that I should have done before. And I literally got like choked up and upset about it. And by the time I left, I was happy and smiling. And I remember that day perfectly because I left. I remember crying and then leaving his office inspired. And I came back the next day and did a better job. So, I mean, how much better does that get if someone can do that to you? So just great times, great memories over the years. And you guys are all awesome. So thanks for having me tonight.
Hey,
thanks for hanging out with us. You have to come back. I mean, we had a lot of questions that we didn't get to answer. This is so fast. So please make some time in the future to come hang out with us again.
I'd love to come back. I feel like we barely scratched the surface tonight.
We did barely scratch the surface. It's a big topic. We are proud to manufacture. We didn't even scratch the surface of Cameroon. We didn't even talk about how wood gets processed. I mean, we got a lot. So
yeah.
Definitely a part 2 to this episode. But thank you so much for your wisdom and your generosity coming on the show. We appreciate you a lot. Everybody who watches the show from week in to week out, including my mom. Thanks, Mom. And Sharpie's parents. Sharpie's parents are watching.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, parents, for supporting us. We love it. I bet you Bob will watch later. So thanks, Bob, for watching. That's fantastic. We appreciate you all. We love the opportunity to do this on a week in and week out. Next week, we have a very special episode. So this is episode 11. Proud to say we did 11 things. All right. I'm glad. Next week is episode 12 of Taylor Primetime. We have our second, Andy, repeat guest. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Andy Powers back on the show next week, and we are going to be talking about picks and strings. Ooh.
I love it.
What a guitar nerd subject that is. I'm really excited. So anyway.
Are you going to watch, Chris?
Yeah.
I'll watch.
Maybe not live.
Got another watcher.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Sharpie and Andy. Andy, take it away.
What was it? What was it? It was prime time. Prime time. What was it? What the heck was that? Well, it was prime time. Prime time. Thank you to Chris Wellons for coming on the show. 2 factories in 2 countries. Wow, that's a lot to know, man. Manufacturing over borders. It sounds pretty hard. We're lucky to have Wellons watching out for your next guitar on Tuesdays, prime time. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you guys.
My dad's in town, by the way. He was watching from the porch. He's visiting from Tahoe, so that's who that was.
Hey!
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate you. See you next week.